Joining me is Paul Penzone, Sheriff of Maricopa County. Thanks for being here, Sheriff. Let's start off with the ACLU and a lawsuit. They're saying that you failed to protect inmates in the jail and the spread of COVID-19. How much can you talk about that with an ongoing thing?
I could talk to you about what we have done. I'll stay away from feeling like I'm supposed to defend that lawsuit. But first and foremost, let's be very clear. I have a lawful responsibility to facilitate the incarceration of people who are arrested by my own agency and others. And I do not, let me tell you what I do not have. I do not have the authority to arbitrarily just release people. That's why we have courts, and that's how it should be. But unequivocally, my responsibility to the community is to ensure that those responsible for crimes are incarcerated until a judge or a court deems otherwise. So what have we done? I've asked my colleagues to help us reduce the jail population, recognizing that COVID posed this threat. And this has been for months. So we took the jail population from 7,500 inmates on a daily average down to about 4,300 over the term of what has been COVID.
In cooperation with the other agencies that bring inmates to your jail.
And all they're doing is they're making decisions if it is a non-violent misdemeanor offense, instead of booking that person, they issue a citation. Because the probability is that person will be released within 48 to 72 hours anyway. But we keep them from cycling through the system and possibly being exposed or bringing the exposure in. So we've cut our population by about 40%, and in paying attention to the crime rate has not changed for us. We issue surgical masks to all the inmates. We conduct evaluations to determine if they're symptomatic, and even now, Correctional Health, which is our medical provider, they're the ones who are really responsible for this, they do testing, very aggressive testing. We issue sanitation items as well as disinfectants and detergents and soaps. There's no limitation on that. So we clean cells, but we also give inmates equipment so they can be responsible for their own cleanliness, which they should be. We have worked to suspend the work furlough program, inmates who would come and go on a daily basis. And then the county attorney's office took steps to suspend it, where those individuals were released from our custody until COVID is over, and not to return and finish their sentence. But ultimately, we see right now, I think as of this morning, about 5% of our inmate population has tested positive for COVID, which is a number well below that of the community average. I cannot, nor would I, just say because there's a pandemic that I should release everyone from our jails.
Right.
So whomever feels differently about it, there's a thing called the courts, and there's due process. And if you're thoughtful, if an attorney has a client who they're concerned about, you can go to a judge and put your argument forward and let that judge determine if I should release that person. But I should not have this unbinding authority to do harm to public safety by releasing people who should not be released, or to make arbitrary decisions. If someone has a health issue, we put them in medical observation, we isolate, and not isolate in a way like a solitary confinement, isolate to care for their medical needs. And if their symptoms escalate, they're transferred to a hospital. So we are doing everything that is reasonable, practical, and thoughtful to care for people in our custody as we are required.
Okay, let me shift for a moment about protests and policing.
Sure. Was I matter of fact enough on that issue?
No, it was very clear. That's why I'm ready to move on. That was actually a perfect description.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, and let me just put a button on it. The men and women in our jail system are doing a phenomenal job in the face of this new challenge.
Right.
Okay, they are also in risk. Yeah, they're doing everything possible to care for these folks, so I'm very passionate about defending the men and women.
And that's why I wanted you to do that, because I wanted people to understand that you are not just standing idly by. So I think you put it perfectly.
Thank you.
When it comes to policing, to look around the leadership, we've talked about the DPS director, the Phoenix police chief, and you yourself. All of you were cops with the Phoenix Police Department.
Correct.
So you understand policing in the city of Phoenix and the relationship that's already been built between the community and the people in law enforcement. Do you believe now, with what you've seen happening, that is as symbolic as it's been between law enforcement and protesters, of it seems to be a mutual desire? Do you really see changes coming, real significant next step changes, so that the community all feels, at least more of the community feels, as if they're respected by law enforcement?
Yeah, I don't think that there can ever be a barometer or a measurable that is high enough to show where our standards should be when it comes to giving respect to our community, because we've been given this privilege of authority to be the caretakers of it. But I can tell you, within our office, our changes have been ongoing for some time now. You know, we have early warning systems, we have body-worn cameras, we have third-party oversight that is an active participant within our organization. We have community outreach programs that also bring the community into our organization so that they can be a partner in our effort to improve policies, procedures, training, and accountability. Are we perfect? No, we're long from it, but I assure you we're far better than we were in the past. Now, when you look at the other agencies, the one thing I'll offer is this. I don't need to speak on behalf of Director Silbert or Chief Williams, but I know them both very well. And what you have in leadership here, not just in those three, in those two entities, but even in others across the state, you have law enforcement leaders who care genuinely. They want to make sure that when you see law enforcement, it makes you proud. Because when we see law enforcement done wrong, like what we saw in Minnesota, and we've had examples here within our own state, we know what it looks like and we know what it feels like. And for those who take pride in this profession, it goes against everything that we value. So I do believe that we have men and women in leadership who aren't just speaking about it, they're acting on it. But this is something that we need support and help from the community in doing. I can't build a stronger police agency, I can't build a stronger sheriff's office if I don't have young men and women of all walks of life looking at our office and saying, I want to be a deputy or I want to be a detention officer in that agency. So we can't have this huge, not only racial divide, but communal divide where we lose sight of the value of what law enforcement represents and what it does on behalf of the community.
Well, and I'm so glad you said that. And the leadership in Phoenix and the Valley is really what led to this community partnership. And I really wanted to say thank you because I think the leadership that Heston Silbert has shown and Jerry Williams and you have shown from day one is the reason why we didn't have the violence we saw in the rest of the country. So I appreciate the ongoing work that you guys are doing, and I appreciate you coming by today.
It's my honor. Thank you very much.
We'll be back.